welcome to Good Game, the show for gamers, by gamers. I'm Bajo.
And I'm Junglist. Badge, what's better than playing a video game?
Ooh.
Take your time.
That's a toughie, Junglist.
Playing a free video game. This week we take a look at some massively multiplayer online role-playing games that don't charge you to download and don't have a monthly subscription fee.
And shooter fans, don't think we're ignoring you with the large S. Quake Live offers a browser-based FPS frenzy, and it's for free. But in the case of these games, do you get what you don't pay for?
Plus, gone are the days of playing a game in school and getting sent straight to detention. We take a look at some games that have been given the principal's tick of approval. But first, can you guess this game?
Can you?
News time, Badge.
Star Wars wipe or Star Wipe, Jung?
Is that ever really a choice?
Star Wipe. Game developer Valve Software have reportedly initiated legal proceedings against game publishing giant Activision in the past week. Valve, who are responsible for hit games like the Half-Life series and Team Fortress 2, are accusing Activision of failing to honour a royalty payment that is owed to them. The suit apparently relates back to another royalty dispute that Valve Software had with Sierra Entertainment. Activision apparently underpaid on their latest royalty check to the tune of more than $500,000 because, they claim, Valve were overpaid by that amount sometime in the past. Activision are reported to be considering a counter-suit. And some serious news broke this week with the announcement that the toughest man in the world, Mr. T, will finally be getting his own video game. Just one piece of concept art has been released so far, but the game's developer Zootfly are promising we'll see the 80s icon battling it out with Nazis and giant robots in an action-adventure game combining combat, platforming, and puzzles. Another surprising development is that none other than game design legend Will Wright will have a starring role in the game. Wright will reportedly play the role of a brilliant geneticist who has been kidnapped by the Nazis and is being forced to work on developing the Third Reich's secret weapons. The game doesn't yet have a release date.
Good game!
Free-to-play games have been lying in wait, gaining their strength in Asia before pouncing on the Western market like a leopard.
Now it seems like we're inundated, and a good number of these games are time-consuming MMOs. No one's gonna get a chance to play them all.
This week we'll check out two, the Chronicles of Spellborn, which we'll come back to later, and Runes of Magic, a recent release from Europe with several updates already.
While Runes of Magic is free to play, it lets you pay real money for in-game diamonds, which you can use to get the more exclusive stuff. You can get these in-game items at any time from the item shop, which isn't actually a physical shop, you just open up the menu.
There are some pretty cool costumes available for cash, and for a fee, you can even transfer any item's stats onto these clothes.
Things like teleportation runes or a crafting rune that would usually require combining several other objects can be found in the store, as well as pets and mounts, which you can get for 7 days, 30 days, or forever.
Paying real money will never directly affect gameplay. A lot of what you pay for is either cosmetic or for convenience, but indirectly those who pay will save a lot of time. You can either grind for a few hours getting that crafting rune or just pay for it and use it.
The classes are pretty much stock standard, and so is the gameplay, really. But if there's one unique thing about Runes of Magic, it's the ability to choose a secondary class, kind of like Final Fantasy, and you can switch between the two.
You need to level up your secondary class separately though, and I couldn't help but groan at the thought of grinding through everything twice. And it is very grindy, those damned beetles! But the secondary class gives you some opportunity for clever skill combos, and later on you get some special abilities.
Other than that and some stylish stunts you can pull off on mounts, Runes of Magic is about as vanilla as they come. It's really the payment model that's being experimented with. Now to the other MMO we've been playing.
And we're cheating a bit here, Jung, because it's not actually free.
No, it's the Chronicles of Spellborn, and while they do let you download and try it for free, once you're almost level 8, you need to either pay or you can keep playing but never get any XP.
It's pretty polished for a new MMO, and even though we're only in the second noob area, it doesn't take long to get the hang of the new ideas in Spellborn. Starting with character creation, you can look however you want and even pick your own armor. In fact, everyone out there, stand up. Now, if you're an MMO player, you might want to sit down for this. Gear doesn't actually matter much in this game.
Oh my god.
Spellborn classes borrow from MMO conventions such as pet classes, AoE, and shapeshifters, but most classes will have something you haven't seen before.
As different as they are to other games, the classes are quite similar to themselves. Spellcasters will still find themselves meleeing, and the same tactics are available to everyone, but at least every class is viable for both solo and group play.
There is no auto-targeting in Spellborn. You'll need to keep your cursor on the enemy you want to attack, and by positioning yourself right, you can damage more than one enemy in a group. It's not one of those games where you can just spam the Frostbolt button. This is an actual combat system that requires more brain power than can be generated by a potato to play.
Spellborn AI is also smarter than average, and they'll actually party together to take you down using tanks, healers, and damage dealers, but they also have to aim and position themselves just like you, so fancy footwork and distance management is important.
Your skill bar will give you a maximum of 5 abilities to use at once, and then it'll rotate around to the next set of abilities. By limiting your options like this, you're never overwhelmed, and you need to have a plan of attack. There are far more abilities than you can use at once, so it's like building up a deck of clever skill chains.
There's different overall strategies to taking enemies down, and it's rare that you'll attack an opponent's health directly. Usually, you'll find some other way around their defense, either by working their morale or breaking down their physicality or disrupting their concentration. Paying attention to this is vital. If someone's morale is completely destroyed, they'll pretty much be taking double damage.
It's a balancing act. You might be a spellcaster who concentrates on morale against a warrior that concentrates on physicality, in which case you'll have to balance your offense with defense, all the while keeping your distance. Sometimes they'll concentrate on the same thing as you, and these mirror matches will come down to efficiency.
Whereas most MMOs are min-maxing games, minimize damage taken, maximize damage output, minimize effort, maximize reward, Spellborn is more strategic than just having 50 abilities and making sure your health is going up more than it's going down.
And something amazing happened. I actually wasn't looking at the quest rewards. In fact, there are very few. I was actually happy just to play the game. Let that sink in, man. That means the fun comes from the gameplay.
And a great example of that is how the game treats gear. No worrying about plus 10 stamina or anything like that. They obviously felt they didn't need to because they had a strong enough game as it is.
And not only that, I gave enough of a crap to read the quests. Sometimes you have to, like the one where you're investigating a murder. You need to pay attention and make a choice at the end of it if the suspect is guilty or not. I can't say how long the interest will last, and we certainly haven't progressed far enough into the game to say, but this game will pretty much stay interesting as long as the spell deck provides new strategies for combat. And as you can see, there's plenty of abilities and your spell deck grows big.
We aren't going to try and rate these as we haven't reached anywhere near endgame, but Runes is a basic option for newcomers. It's like an introduction to MMOs.
If you've played a few and you're ready for something new, you'll be impressed with the ideas of Spellborn, which are simple, but they really shine in PvP. And if you really grasp the combat system, you can do quite well. Take on large groups of mobs higher level than you, and why not? It's kind of like Age of Conan without the suck. And if you've got 3 gigabytes to waste on your download limit, it's worth trying out for free.
Did you know that video games are fun?
So it's no surprise that educators are trying to harness that to teach you something.
Now, as a gamer, have you ever wondered how it's possible to spend literally hours totally absorbed in a game, concentrating 100% and able to lock out the world entirely? But when it comes to stuff like study and homework, you have the attention span of a goldfish, and a sick one at that. So maybe it's not that surprising that educators are turning to video games as a way of engaging a whole new generation of students.
One of the key problems in the classroom is that we're failing to engage our children in the content. What we should be looking at is changing the structure of the way in which we pass on the content.
At Pinball Ladies College, students are encouraged to use games as part of their education, and the benefits are twofold. They are studying traditional curriculum whilst becoming more responsible for their own learning.
We have a number of games that are focused towards subject matters like languages or English or maths mainly, and history, geography, could be any of them.
I like Mathletics and Spellborn because they help you improve, and because it's worldwide, you're versing people from other countries.
Like any game structure, you have a start, you have a finish, you have a goal in between, and you have challenges to get to go there. They learn to not to just go through one path because it's there. They learn to look at alternatives.
Do you think you learn anything from the games you play at home?
The difference between the educational games we play at school and the ones that we play at home is that the ones that we play at home, the educational aspect is probably not explicit. And that's a really good thing. And that's why children play these games, because they think of it as a game, not as work.
We're trying to make the game fun as much as that edutainment thing can be. We don't want to, the kids sort of playing a game. They're not necessarily realising that they're learning bits and pieces, which is always a good thing. But you are trying to make it an enjoyable aspect to that game so that they'll come back and play it. The other thing about these games is you're trying to get away from that part of the games industry, which is the punishment for making mistakes. And when you're making young games, you don't really want to punish the player for doing that sort of stuff. So it's a bit more of a supportive game in that fact that if you get stuff wrong, you get the opportunity to learn from that mistake and try and get it correct again.
Cherrybrook Technology High School specialises in an e-learning program where students use technology to program their own learning.
Students love games. You talk to some of our students and they'll be up to 2, 3 o'clock in the morning trying to do away with their best friend in the next street away. Games can become a tool for teachers to use to get students to analyse different aspects of a course. So why not engage the students through a game? The students, particularly in Year 12, will engage in major projects where they actually design solutions to problems that they largely come up with. And a lot of these now tend to be game-based projects.
Tell us about the game that you've made. Now, this is for your HSC, wasn't it?
That's right, it's for my multimedia project. I called it Medieval Life, and it's basically a medieval role-playing game where you can complete quests, you have an inventory system, you can explore your environment, that sort of thing.
Tell us about this game. What do you actually do in it, and what inspired you to make this?
Well, it's actually a really simple game. It's just called Futuristic Space Adventurer, and you just fly around and really just shoot stuff and try to get through the levels. And there's a few puzzles and a few things to mix things up, but it's fairly challenging. What inspired me to make it, I guess just basic platforming games, side-scrolling games.
It does seem like there will be a natural transition towards the use of games in the classroom as video game technology becomes more widely accepted as having benefits to offer both student and teacher.
It's that guidance and support that a good teacher can provide that empowers a student to use a game in an appropriate way, because otherwise it's just then a game. It's not a learning product. Yeah.
Good game! So we all now know that games can be entertaining, but they can also educate you about stuffs. Put the two together and you've got a little something called edutainment. Take this for example. Math Grand Prix and Word Zapper, two of the earliest games for the Atari 2600, attempted to teach you a few basic literacy and mathematical skills. They came out in 1982, and while Math Grand Prix challenged you with multiplication, addition, subtraction, and division equations, with each correct answer propelling your racer along the track towards the finish line, Word Zapper was all about gunning down an invading army of letters to spell out important words like shoot and alien. Funny that. So, were they any good? No, they weren't really, but there were certainly worse ways to practice your sums and spelling. However, it would be just a few years later when American game developer Broderbund Software came up with an edutainment game that was a bit heavier on the tainment. That game was Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? And it's probably still the best known and most loved edutainment title of all time. It saw you take on the role of a globe-trotting sleuth on the trail of a notorious international criminal, Miss Sandiego herself. You'd travel the globe, stopping at the world's most exotic cities, and learn trivia about the region's geography and local customs before making your arrest. Spend too long sightseeing and your suspect would get away. Now, although this next game was never very popular in Australia, for reasons that will soon become obvious, it was very popular in North America and is also considered one of the best edutainment games ever made. Oregon Trail was its name, and it let players experience the trials and tribulations of the earliest white American settlers attempting to follow the titular trail to the Wild West. It was more of a strategy game than anything else. You had to hunt wild animals for food and profit, manage your supplies and funds, keep your covered wagons on the right path, and most importantly of all, avoid dying of dysentery. While the cultural significance is mostly lost on an international audience, the game is still pretty good, making learning about foreign cultures easy. But that can't be said for all edutainment games. In fact, there are some educational disasters that would make a week of detentions seem like fun. Like this, for example. Sometime during the 90s, Nintendo thought it might be a good idea to license their mascot Mario and his brother Luigi to any company that would make edutainment games based on the two super siblings. The result was several awful games, including this one, Mario's Time Machine. The idea of the game was to give kids a history lesson. The only problem was the game was way too complicated for any school-aged youngster to understand. You had to travel to different time periods, learning different facts to fill in a book, and that's pretty much it. It was made even worse by these awful bits, where you had to surf for absolutely no reason at all just to travel back in time. These days, we've been absolutely inundated with edutainment games. Every foreign language has its own coaching video game, usually on the DS, and stuff like Dr. Kawashima's Brain Training and all of its numerous spin-offs and knockoffs promise to exercise your brain muscle. However, out of all of them, our favorite edutainment title of all time has to be this. There have been numerous games aiming to teach you to type, but there's only one that lets you touch-type hordes of undead zombies back to the death that they once avoided dying. It is, of course, Typing of the Dead. It came out in arcades and for the Sega Dreamcast in the year 2000, and it's basically just a remake of the House of the Dead 2, except instead of being equipped with lethal pistols, your agents are kitted out with a keyboard with the power to re-kill the undead. Not only did the game teach you how to type fast, it also taught you how to not have your brains eaten. Both essential life skills. Good game! We've shown the MMO players some Love This Week badge, but shooter fans also have a new freebie in the form of Quake Live.
Absolutely, Jung. I'll let you do the honors.
Basically, it's Quake 3 Arena played through your browser. As long as you've got the internet and the latest version of IE, Firefox, whatever, all you have to do is download a plugin that's a couple of megabytes, and you can get stuck into a deathmatch in your browser.
And in many ways, it does more than Quake 3 ever did. It keeps track of your stats, and you have a profile page with friends, and there's clan support. It's free to play, and later on they plan on charging for server rentals.
Welcome to Quake Live.
When you first log on, it'll try and gauge your skill by seeing if you can rocket jump. Then you'll face off against the computer for 10 minutes or so. It'll use that info to recommend servers when you log on. And the quality of play is already pretty high. I mean, some of these Quake players, I don't want to say freaks, well, I guess I just did.
You're freaks.
QQ more, Jung. Maps are kept small, and you've got your full arsenal of Quake weapons, from your lightning to your railgun to your rockets. And it's just cool being able to log in from anywhere, pick up your profile, and just start playing an arena match, isn't it, John?
Absolutely, and the pings are good. There's an Australian server. We can't apply a rating because it's still in beta, but it's worth checking out. Good game! World of Warcraft players are used to long journeys on the backs of giant mythological bird, dragon, bat-like things which act like aeroplanes, connecting the major cities of Azeroth with flight paths. But it wasn't until the Burning Crusade expansion that you could take to the air at will on the back of your very own flying mount. Being able to fly meant no more treks to city flight masters, the ability to avoid pesky gankers by soaring right over their heads, and the opportunity to see the Azeroth landscape from a whole new point of view. It was so convenient, it pretty much guaranteed everyone stayed in the new land and ensured that the majority of WoW's 10 million players forked out for the new expansion. Gaining the ability to fly in World of Warcraft is this week's great moment in gaming. Good game!
Little King's Story for Nintendo Wii is a very cute role-playing simulation game. And even though the storybook cutscenes and MySim-like graphics make it look like just a kid's game, it's really not. And unlike MySims, there's more to do than just splash about in a fountain. I do enjoy a good water feature though, John.
I don't. One day, a boy finds a crown and becomes king. Now it's up to you to unite the 7 kingdoms by killing everything you can in a cutthroat attempt at world domination. You start things off with a spot of gardening and building up of your kingdom. Then it's on in an epic adventure. The king rarely gets his hands dirty though. The gameplay is all about your minions and how you use them.
Much of your first few hours is spent shuffling your crew and tediously recruiting carefree adults about town and assigning them careers. It gets more interesting after about hour 4 when you unlock more of the map, townsfolk abilities, and building upgrades. It's quite fun expanding your kingdom, and almost every time you do a quest or beat a boss, something new becomes available for you to use.
You do need to be careful with your money though. There's a few bits where if you spend it in the wrong place, you'll be grinding for an hour just to progress. There's a lot of jobs for your carefree adults to join in. There's farming and building, lumberjacking and jacking lumbering. Lumberjacks can break open huge fallen logs, and you have guard and ranged battle units too. Often only one particular class will be able to open up a hole or break open a barrier. But then the rest of the units can help from that point, so if you have a couple of each at least in your party, you'll do all right and not have to backtrack.
Boss battles aren't a breeze though, and usually require a failed attempt. And the game is arguably more fun on easy. As king, you have 2 major functions in battle, attack and retreat. And this means lots of enemies have exploding moments, which force you to pull your minions back or lead them out of the way. Formations help with this, and you buy these as you go. As it stands though, it's just a bit simple, Jung. It would have been nice to have more control over who does what, because you just end up sending tanks into holes because they're too stupid to see them, or you send your guys into oncoming oblivion or walls.
Sometimes the pathfinding will let you down and your peasants will get stuck too. It's hard to keep an eye on them when there's 17 of the little guys, and going back to find them is tiresome. Many of your followers will die in battle, especially if there's no refreshing health pools around, which means wandering back to town with only a few battle-worn survivors. As king, you only have a small amount of life yourself, and if you die, that's it. You better have saved your progress.
And you can only save when you're sitting on your throne. And this means if you don't want to risk losing treasure you found or the 20 minutes you spent organising your crew, then you're going to have to trudge all the way back to your kingdom, sit on your throne, call your file-saving underling, save your game, then have a rest to regain some health, and then recruit your guys back again, and then fight all the way back to the point where you started from.
It is a retro throwback, but it's lengthening the game in totally the wrong way, Bajo. We had to replay hours while reviewing the game, and it's just an unnecessary punishment to the gamer.
And the only time you can actually continue is in an elite boss fight, but if you brought the wrong classes with you, it's kind of the same thing. Back to the kingdom, another save, and Jung, I thought we were past all this backtracking gameplay. I mean, it's not like we don't have the disk space anymore.
Well, while we're at it, what's with so many DS and Wii games only having 3 save slots?
It's the naughties, Nintendo. Work it out. Ah!
Well, you gotta get those things under control, man.
I know, it's really starting to cause me some problems.
Go! Gol, 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 gol. Golazo, golazo, golazo.
Lots of experienced developers actually worked on this, from Harvest Moon to Dragon Quest to Final Fantasy to even Kingdom Hearts, and you can really feel their influence. And if you've ever played the classic Pikmin, then you can feel that too. Final thoughts?
I really enjoyed the dark humor in the story, and I actually found myself reading all the text instead of skipping through it. Classic controller support would have been nice, but there's lots of hours here, and even the odd chuckle. I'm giving it 8.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
The music slowly drove me crazy, and I couldn't find a way to turn it off. But it is great fun expanding your empire, and it's always fun searching for treasure. Jung, the backtracking was a deal breaker for me. I don't think it would be for everyone, but it definitely was for me. I'm giving it 7 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Good game.
So, did you guess the game for this week?
It was the Magic School Bus Explores the Solar System, released on the Macintosh and Windows PC systems back in 1994, and it also got an installment on the Sega Mega Drive. The game itself wasn't the greatest thing to play. It didn't have much educational value, with only the bare minimum of actual information regarding the solar system. Instead, most of your time at the planets was spent landing the ship, jumping out and exploring in Mario style, before finally completing several puzzles. Then you had the joy of doing it all over again for the next planet.
Yes, it was a bit like space, wasn't it, Jung? Didn't have much atmosphere.
Just before we go, a word about one of our recent games, Riddick Assault on Dark Athena. You'll recall that we said you only get 3 activations of the game ever. We've since heard from the game's publishers that they'll be giving back 1 activation every month that you own the game. And while the game does have DRM, we said it used Securom, which has been linked to PC security issues. It actually uses a system called Taegis, which seems to be okay as long as the authentication servers are up and running.
Next week, a Dota-like MMO from the makers of Supreme Commander.
And Ray meets a developer, a games journalist, and a professional gamer.
We've had hundreds of submissions for the random access memory, but there's still room for more. So, in 60 words or less, tell us about your favourite gaming moment or memory, and the best of them will get in the Good Game book. More info?
Till next time, gamers, Junglist out.
Happy gamers, Bajo out.